Big Talk is a member of Odd Pods Media and the ASAP Network. Probably would help for me to put us in the room.
Hey, we're off and running here on this Friday morning. Welcome into Big Talk. I'm Dalton Shetler. That's Sam Sprunger. College sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. We're despite the shaky takeoff, we're ready to go here on this Friday because
It's Friday.
That's right. And the NFL draft. We've got round one in the books. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Big Ten flavor in round one and what's still to come. We got a couple other topics to hit on as well. But nonetheless, I got to be honest with you, Sam. Normally, when it comes to the drafts, either NFL, NBA, because those are the biggest broadcasted ones, right?
Yeah. The baseball one has just started being a TV thing. Before it was like, I don't know if you ever see like the old video of like when the Colts took John Elway, the commissioner's in a conference room in a hotel in front of a little podium, and he says, the Baltimore Colts select John Elway, and like nobody's there other than just the people drafting. That's kind of what baseball was until just here recently, and they started making it a big deal. So they're a little bit behind in times.
And forgive me, but the nature of the MLB draft, not so much the NHL, but a little bit NHL, like they're just so weird.
Mm-hmm.
You draft somebody that could still be playing college. Like
they could be high schoolers you've never heard of. Also, I know they've pared it down, but there used to be over 100 rounds of the Major League Baseball draft. So like that's and it was the first pick took like 5 minutes, if that. Second one, like they were rapid fire, whereas the NFL you used to get 15 and now it's down to 10 because they've made it more TV friendly. But yeah, Major League Baseball has evolved with their draft, but yeah, you still get kids that you've never heard of because they're playing high school more than like a lot of them nowadays anyways.
But I do got to be honest, for the most part, even on the bigger broadcastable drafts, the NFL and the NBA, I normally kind of take a waiver on them, and I will just follow along on social media. And because, honestly, what else are you really getting from the broadcast? Last night's I was hooked into for a little bit, and I don't know if it's because there's so much movement, because this draft class maybe is a little bit under what some of the previous have been, but I was hooked in to see how teams were handling some of this, and you got to see the players slide. Will Levis is still on the board as we talk right now, getting ready for the second round. But it was interesting.
Real quick, how weird is that situation? Like there was a tweet that said he'd been notified by Carolina he was going to be picked number 1, and here he is still on the board after the first round's over.
It's weird misinformation. Never heard of such a thing.
Well, I've gotten to the point where anymore, and I always knew it was kind of what happened anyways, because you never want to tip your hat, because you never want to have somebody jump in front. Unless you're the number 1 pick, you really can't openly talk about what you want to do, because you don't want a team to know what your strategy is, because they may jump in front of you. But the CJ Stroud thing really concerns me to where like it's getting almost dirty. Like there were the mock draft that we talked about last week. The one I saw from CBS, a main component of the sports world, had him going 9th or 8th. And then Greg Doyle, I see Greg Doyle puts out a thing that people are lying about his testing. And the guy or the people that run the testing said, yeah, that's all false. That's starting to get to the point where it's kind of dirty, because you're hurting a man's, like his way of life. And, the difference between the second pick, which is where he went, and the 8th pick, it's millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, being a little misleading is different than trying to sabotage a guy's reputation so he falls to where teams want him. I don't know. It leaves a sour taste in my mouth.
Well, and it wasn't just the test scores that were reported right beforehand.
Right.
Like there was the
the big cog in the story.
But like it was a accumulation of things, which kind of leads even further to your point. Brady Quinn had the tweet in the story about how he ghosted or bailed on the quarterback camp. And that there were concerns with that because you don't do that to the Manning camp and so on and so forth. I can't remember all the details in there. And there were some others too. And it led Green to say it's a character assassination attempt on CJ Stroud. And I found that interesting as well, how that was all playing out for Stroud to ultimately land at number 2. So I'm with you, especially as we talk about misinformation. I thought that was fascinating to watch develop.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, like the whole Will Levis thing, while that's false as well, that's harmless in the aspect of that's not somebody attacking somebody's character. That's just, hey, Will Levis has been notified he's going to be taken number 1. Well, that doesn't do anything other than just mislead teams in what they may have available to him picking. You're not attacking a person's character or his, I don't know. It really bothers me a lot more than Will Levis being rumored to be number 1 pick. I mean, that's all fun and games and fair in the world of, drafting. But when you're trying to assassinate somebody's reputation, that's pretty bad. That's getting to the point where it's, I don't know, you're showing your character if you guys are, trying to, pull this guy's reputation and pour it down the drain. I salute Stroud though, because he never came out and, just threw a fit. He just said, you know what? I can only control what I can control. I'm going to go be me, and wherever I fall, I fall.
By the way here, speaking of things in the stratosphere of covering the NFL draft, did anybody else, and by anybody else, I mean, I'm asking you, Sam, and anybody else can chime in on social media. Did anybody else find it interesting that last night Shams had tweeted out the first 3 picks before they happened and none more? Because I kept going back to his Twitter to see, and no more came up.
So
I know there was,
before they happened, he had it out.
Very, very deja vu of what Woj did in the NBA draft that one time when he was at Yahoo. So I found it interesting because there was a pretty big social reaction on Twitter of people saying, stop, just watch the draft with the rest of us. I wonder what got Shams to stop, because I just was curious if it came from the backlash of the fans or if it came from somebody connected with ESPN saying you're killing the broadcast. Stop it. I'm curious how that sausage is made.
Case, because and let me ask this. I did not see that, but did he have the Texans taking Will Anderson number 3?
Yes.
So he had the trade in place before it even happened.
So, and let me be clear then, because maybe I didn't specify enough.
Okay.
This was happening 2 minutes before a pick would happen. So like he announced like the Texans made the trade with the Cardinals right before it happened. And then as that's coming across the broadcast, like it's now being tweeted, Texans are taking Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama. And then 2 minutes later on the broadcast, Goodell goes up to the podium. So it was just
getting it fed somewhere from somewhere really close to what was happening. Like, wow, no, I didn't see that, but I'm guessing the NFL and ESPN got a hold of him and said, you need to stop.
Which is interesting because that means that ESPN learned from the night where Woj took over, and they learned, besides just, hey, we need him on our team, they learned that we got to find ways to be able to cut off the water in these situations. So I was just curious how anybody else interpreted that.
Because I'm sure there are people, and like people like Adam Schefter, those big names, they have all this information right before. But if they're going to ruin like their job, their bosses, broadcast, they're not going to cut their nose off, spite their face, they're gonna, okay, we'll let it go.
Yep.
You know, and then
where Shams is in a position where it's not his boss.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious,
but
if he was motivated to do it in the beginning, what motivated him to stop?
I'm wondering if maybe it was one of those, is if you want to still continue to be somebody in this world of, you know, the NFL draft or whatever, you might want to quit, because if not, if you keep doing this, that's fine, you can do it, but going forward, you're not going to be able to report anything because you're going to have false information.
And I'm curious too if listeners find that interesting at all, or if they don't really care, because like sports media coverage doesn't get covered very well, and so like that's something that's just going to dissolve into the shadows. But I'm curious, like, what the story was behind the scenes. But
will we ever find out is my question.
Yeah. Hey, I tell you what, too, before we actually get into, because we've talked a little bit about CJ Stroud, before we fully dive into the Big Ten in this first round, our visual audience might be staring at me perplexed because on my sweatshirt, I made comments as soon as our microphones open.
I serenaded backstage. You in song because of it.
But our visual audience sees I'm wearing a Detroit Lions sweatshirt. So for our audio audience, getting you caught up to speed. But before we get into real football, Sam said, "What's going on there?" And I said, "Well, maybe it's a better story on air." So I'll quickly dive into this. So I grew up a Yankees fan because of Derek Jeter. Yep. I grew up a LeBron fan, and I followed LeBron wherever he went for a long period of time. And when I was, I want to say just going into junior high, I was looking for an NFL team. And I said, you know what? My favorite college team, I grew up rooting for Notre Dame. I'll go through every NFL roster and find out which team has the most Notre Dame alums on there. At the time, it was the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes, I knew that too.
A few years back, I was looking in the mirror and I said, okay, I'm a Yankees, Lakers, Cowboys fan. This doesn't
You're
look
the
good.
Epitome of like bandwagon if somebody
right
looked at it.
Well, and everybody would call me a bandwagon, but like I never saw a team win. The Cowboys haven't won. The Yankees have won one World Series since like the 2000 age of Jeter and Bernie Williams and Jorge Posada.
2009, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I was 5 or 6 when they were going through that 2000 run. But 2009, I remember very, very well. But like between the Cowboys, Yankees, and like I'm really not winning. But this
even
is
the Lakers up until just, you know, like the end of Kobe's run with Shaq, you know, where they went 3 in a row. They didn't. I mean, 91 was the last time they were in the finals up to that point when they got beat by Jordan. So
it fit me better when LeBron was with the Cavs. I'm not gonna lie. That's so. But I was like, I can't be this guy. I can't be the Yankees, Lakers, Cowboys guy.
So went the other extreme.
I was like, how can I balance this out? And I looked just over here because I live in Michigan and the Detroit Lions are going on. And I'm like, that's my solution. So I went full in with the Detroit Lions.
You know what it was? Is you know what the Lions were like for you right there being, you know, in Michigan. They're right up on your shoulder, sitting real quiet going, "Hi there. You want to be our friend?" And you're like, fine, let's be friends.
Well, and then they hired Dan Campbell and just kind of ushered that over. And I was like, yeah, I want to be on this boat. Like Dan, they are a fun group. They're easy to root for. So that's the story behind the Dalton Detroit fandom.
Well, growing up, I'm a Bears fan. I'm a Cubs Bears when it comes to. I don't really have an NBA team. Honestly, if I had to say, I didn't have a rooting NBA team really. So I just kind of adopted one when I was, really young and impressionable. And it was the Utah Jazz for some unbeknownst reason other than I really like Karl Malone and John Stockton. So I started following them. So the 97 finals and the 98 finals really killed me because, and yes, I do believe Michael Jordan pushed off on Bryant Russell. Yes, I do believe it, but I don't think there was any way they were going to call a foul.
Correct.
So let's put that. Yes, I think he did push off, but in in the heat of the game and stuff like that, they're not going to call that.
Oh,
John
well,
Stockton was an eyelash away from winning that game too on that 3 at the end.
The argument of it, like, let's be honest. Look, I was barely alive, but I've watched the tape enough times. That is a push. Like, what are we doing?
Sure.
Like, I know we love just to, but the mythology of Michael Jordan is greater than the player ever was, which is a damn thing to say because, like, we're talking about probably the greatest player. I know that's a debate too. I don't really want to step into that one because that one's overdone. But
it's Jordan every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I'm not going to lie.
Fine enough. I just don't want to do Jordan versus LeBron right now on this show.
I saw personally, I'm old enough, and there are probably viewers / listeners that are in the same boat as me. I saw both of them most of their career. I saw most of Jordan's career and then all of LeBron's. And LeBron has the body to play in Jordan's era, but he doesn't have, I don't think he has the character. And yeah, okay, then we'll just leave it at that. I'm done.
But yeah, I mean, like, look, growing up playing basketball and like playing high school and sitting the bench in college, but being on a college basketball team,
right.
Like you would do some different drills, and there was one drill we did with ball handling and cones where you emulated the Jordan push off from that game. So like we were training ourselves to do the push off. Like, yes, it's a push off.
Go right, dribble right, and go right, then cross over, push while you're crossing
with that
over.
left hand, and then come back with
and then
it,
come back to
and
it.
You got space, So no, it's a push. It's a push,
and
it's
you know
okay.
What?
It's a push.
Almost every player in that situation does that, including Michael Jordan. And I would say less than half would probably get called for it in that situation.
Jimmy Butler just made one of the most iconic shots I've ever seen in basketball in the playoffs, and it was a push. Like, it doesn't, to me, deter the moment that was, but like, it was a push. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I get it. I completely get it. And you know what? That right, wrong, or indifferent. And we've talked about Caitlin Clark. If we want to pull the Big Ten part into it, they get some special treatments.
Yep.
It's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what the mega stars get. And there was no way a referee was blowing that whistle on Michael Jordan.
And we're talking about something from 25 years ago where like the rules have changed, where offense, like, it's almost encouraged at times that you do that.
They might have called a foul on Bryant Russell if we were in today's NBA.
It's true. Oh man! All right,
did him too close.
We promised we want to get to Big Ten football, the NFL draft. We had some other stuff. Let's get to a first quarter break. We'll come back with the first round. All right. So as we said, the first round of the NFL draft is in the books. There were a couple things that I thought were surprising from the first round of the NFL draft. But let's start off here. Let's get you a list of all the Big Ten members that were selected in the first round. We start with Ohio State, selected second to the Houston Texans, of course, from, did I say C.J. Stroud or Ohio State?
From Ohio State, C.J.
Thank you.
Stroud.
I
was wondering, the whole team got drafted?
Yeah.
Well, no,
maybe.
Yeah.
At the fifth pick, the Seahawks took Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, which was really, really interesting because he had a great college career. And especially when they announced that one on the ESPN broadcast and they showed some of his highlights. Like, I think somebody had mentioned, and I used to know the stat, but like, you only allowed one completion like throughout the year. I mean, he had a ridiculous
season.
Like he was
in a
so
great way.
good.
In a great way. Like
yeah.
I honestly would say that even over the Will Anderson draft, that's the best defensive draft pick in this.
If Witherspoon was still available at 6 for my Detroit Lions now, as I've
they wouldn't have traded.
They wouldn't have traded. They would have grabbed him 100%.
I think so. Yeah. Well, I think that's where he was kind of slotted in, and in a lot of the mock drafts was into Detroit.
Yeah, I kind of wish that would have happened. Either him or Anderson. It wasn't the
Seahawks.
Yeah. But then Detroit traded their pick back. The Cardinals took it at 6, and they took Paris Johnson Jr., the big offensive tackle out of Ohio State. So 3 Big Ten players selected in the top 6 in this year's draft. Then you go down to number 11. The Titans took Peter Skoronski, the big offensive tackle from Northwestern. At 13, the Packers took Lucas Van Ness, the defensive end from Iowa.
I liked him until he got drafted.
Green Bay?
Yeah.
Yeah, how you feeling with the Aaron Rodgers thing? You're
You know what? Being a Bears fan, it's it's about time we got at least a fair shake. And of course, Jordan Love will probably be the next Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, because that's just the way it works in my lifetime. After Don Mikowski, which I still to this day have a great disdain for that man, because he was clearly across the line of scrimmage. This was when, in the day of instant replay, where it could take 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was every possible play. There were no coaches' challenges. It was just, we're going to go look at that instant replay. He was clearly past the line of scrimmage, threw a touchdown pass. They reviewed it for like 5 to 8 minutes. And I'm sitting there screaming at the television saying he's across the line of scrimmage completely. They gave him the touchdown anyways. And the Packers beat the Bears for like the first time in like 8 years. And so from that point on, my disdain for the Packers has grown even wider.
That was the origin story of.
Well, I didn't like them already, because I was a Bears fan, but like they hadn't done anything in my lifetime until that thing, and it was like, yeah, now I know why I don't like them.
So that was Lucas Van Ness going to the Packers at 13, the D from Iowa, which, by the way, like I don't believe, I think the stat was he didn't have a start last year at Iowa. Like,
which is amazing to think he's a first-round draft pick and he didn't start.
This is somebody whose ceiling is just sky high, and I think that's what's really attractive about him.
My question about him is did he have this high draft stock before the combine or after the combine?
I think I'm not really sure what the disconnect is there between lack of starting at Iowa and why he's such a machine that everybody wants him. Because like you watch the tape and you do check out some of the combine numbers, you're like, wow, you think Iowa maybe should have had him starting. Wow. And to be honest,
side of the ball, they're actually smart.
I was going to say, yeah, like I'm not going to question Phil Parker, but like you watch the tape and everything and you see like the skill and talent that's there. So
the reason why I ask is Mike Mamula back in the day was not even on draft like reports or whatever, went to the combine and absolutely blew things away and ended up like a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
And then just did nothing. And so like that's why I asked if this draft stock was, because he wasn't garbage. He just didn't pan out in the NFL. And so I didn't know if this was maybe a modern day Mike Mamula or if it was people just he was on such a great defense that he just didn't start, which is possible. I'm not saying that that's not possible. I just didn't know if it was a Mamula.
Well, and that kind of reminded me of, we do have somebody like that whose combine numbers were so through the roof. It made everybody not just double take, but triple take. And he's from the Big Ten. He's from Michigan State, Ben Van Sumeren. Check out the numbers that Ben Van Sumeren had at the combine. This is a linebacker. Okay. Vertical 42.5 inches.
Holy crap. He can almost jump over my 7-year-old.
40-yard dash time, 4.4.
For a linebacker.
Broad jump.
Really awesome.
Broad jump, 10.11.
Goodness.
Bench press, 29 reps.
Whoa. That's more than some linemen do.
So he did this at the pro day for Michigan State. And at the bottom, because MSU football tweeted this graphic out, they said out of the 2023 NFL Combine linebacker participants, Ben Van Sumeren's vertical jump would have been the highest. His broad jump would have been the longest. Bench press would have been tied for the most. And 40-yard dash would have been the second fastest. Like, he absolutely blew up the pro day different metrics where, like, I think before then he was undrafted. Now he's probably going to be drafted because that's too impressive to ignore.
Well, here's the thing, though. At least he didn't. People didn't lose their minds like they did with Mamula and make him a top 10 pick because of it. Because I think that, what was it? You know, you don't play football games in underwear or shorts and a t-shirt, I think is what one coach said. You know, you can't go just by what they do at the combine. And they did that with Mike Mamula. Not that he wasn't good. Excuse me. I believe he went to Boston College. Not that he wasn't good in college. It just, his numbers outside of a football uniform were amazing and people jumped at it.
I remember talking with Ben this last year and you get so much different access for the most part where you can talk to these guys. And so one of the topics I was hitting on him with was speed, because we had a couple of guys that were really flashing their speed on the team. And so I was going around, I was like, hey, who's the fastest or whatever? And I went to Ben and asked him, and he goes, me. And I said, Ben, you're a linebacker. And he goes, yeah, we got the numbers. And I was like, well, okay. And now, like, I'm like, wow, like Ben Van Sumeren was honest. Like he's
lying,
that guy.
And he wasn't like, being cocky about it. It's just me.
Yep. So,
I'm glad that his number, I mean, because you know what? They should correlate into something into the draft. They just shouldn't be the only thing you go off of.
Agreed. But that'll be interesting to watch in the later rounds for the listeners. Watch where Ben Van Sumeren gets to go, because his combine numbers or pro day numbers were ridiculous.
And I tell you what, I never thought we would be talking about Lucas Van Ness this long.
I know. Well, let's go from one Hawkeye to another. Lucas Van Ness was selected at 13. At 18, Jack Campbell.
Can I just say that's an awesome name? I love that name.
It is an
awesome name. I don't know what about it. I just, Jack Campbell. Sounds
it's a stout name for like a stout linebacker. Like it fits. But he's not really stout. Like he's a taller, longer linebacker.
Right,
but anyway.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
He goes to your Lions. All right.
That's right. At number 18. So the Lions, which is interesting. And the Lions have gotten the most criticism and, let's say, just noise from the first round of the NFL draft, because a lot of people believe the selections they made at 12, which was Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back out of Bama, and at 18, Jack Campbell, the linebacker out of Iowa, they believe they would have been available later in the draft. And maybe they sold up, but the Lions and what GM Brad Holmes and the front office are saying is they were our guys. We don't want to risk if they were available. We went and got our guys. So now we'll just see how.
Let's say it this way: the front office of the Lions felt that was the furthest down they could trade and still get Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It does not matter. They felt that if they traded any further down with teams that were willing to trade, they might not get the guy that they wanted, and they might have had two, and one of them got taken. I'm done with judging now. The Bears taking Mitchell Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes, and I heard a stupid thing. Oh, well, do you think Mahomes would have won with Nagy in Chicago? Let's think about this, kids. Who was Mahomes' quarterback's coach last year when he won the Super Bowl? Matt Nagy. Okay, so he could have won with Matt Nagy. I'm just saying.
I actually didn't know Nagy was there in KC staff.
He actually came from KC to Chicago, and then as soon as he was let go from the Bears, went right back to KC, and he was the quarterback's coach. So he was Patrick Mahomes' quarterback coach last year. So okay, let's pump the brakes a touch. But my point is front offices have certain people that this is who we're going to target. How low can we go and get some more draft capital and still get our guy? The Lions felt 12 was as low as they could go and still get Gibbs.
Yeah.
Period.
So it's interesting. And we'll kind of see how it plays out. But we got three more Big Ten guys. Wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba. He was slated to go maybe a little bit higher than where he landed, but number 20 to the Seattle Seahawks. And wow,
I tell you what, that's a receiver core there.
I was going to say between DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, and
Lockett.
Yeah, I was going to say Lockett, and then you look in the backfield and you still have Kenneth Walker III there after a breakout rookie season. Geno Smith on top of a great year, like
fresh off of an extension, a new.
I kind of like what's cooking there in Seattle.
Seattle could be a pretty good, at least offensively. I'm not really 100% sure what they're going to do, on the defensive side, because they rebuilt it, and then with Witherspoon there, that's going to boost.
Mm-hmm.
We're going Big Ten West out there. Geez.
Hey, I was going to say it's true. It is true. Well, Big Ten East, right?
No, Big Ten West
from Ohio State.
I'm talking about Seattle being in the Northwest there, Dalton. Geographically, for the Seahawks, they are West.
I was starting to do the math, and I'm like, wait a minute.
I'm not talking about division of the Big Ten. I'm talking about the Big Ten Conference in the West.
That works.
So
I
should I say Northwest? The Big Ten Northwest?
Yeah, we'll switch it to there.
So it's not as confusing anyways.
At 25, Deonte Banks, a quarter out of Maryland, was selected by the Giants. And the final Big Ten member was a Wolverine defensive tackle, Monzie Smith, selected by the Dallas Cowboys at number 27. So that's how this ended up shaping out.
9
Big Ten players selected in the first round.
30% of the first round came from the Big Ten. That's not to say Georgia, they just keep pumping out people that just get drafted. Bama too. But the conference as a whole, just, for 9 of 32 to be taken from the Big Ten, it's impressive.
So I wanted to add up too, because you mentioned that Georgia and Bama just keep pumping them out. 3 Crimson Tide players went in the first round. For Georgia, they had, is it just 2? Just 2 first rounders? Yeah, Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter.
No, Nolan Smith down at the bottom.
Yeah, just those 2 though, right?
No, I saw 3. Broderick Jones, Pittsburgh.
Good find. So 3 Bulldogs, 3 Crimson Tide players. So between Bama and Georgia, you had 6 in the first round. But that goes to
Big Ten,
how big they are.
The Big Ten Conference and those 2 teams made up 15 of 32 picks.
and I should clarify too, 31, because one was a lost pick.
Yeah, that's right.
There's only 31 this year.
Who was it?
But
because I'm seeing 32 picks.
Well, they started putting in parentheses when the pick that was like taken away from the Dolphins because of the Tom Brady trying to get him to the Dolphins thing that happened.
Yeah.
So they started putting in parentheses what pick it actually is. Yeah.
Let's see, it would have been the 21st pick was gone.
So yeah,
I forgot about that one. So I wasn't looking at the parentheses until you said it, and I'm like, oh yeah.
So to make the point even bigger, 15 out of the 31 picks were either Big Ten, Georgia, 50%. Or Bama. That's hard to top. We'll talk about what else is to come with the NFL draft in the Big Ten when we come back after this halftime break.
You are listening to Big Talk, hosted on Spotify for podcasters and StreamYard.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
This is Beer in Front. Every week I'll talk about a beer that maybe we've forgotten along the way while we get those check-ins and badges. Being the Chicago beer guy, I'll also talk about great craft beer in the city of Chicago. And remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. That's Beer in Front, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
All right, time to get the second half going. Again, taking a look at the NFL draft and the Big Ten. We highlighted a lot and recapped the first round of the NFL draft. We wanted to take a look forward at what's to come with the NFL draft and some of the Big Ten members. Of course, if you're looking at best available right now, Will Levis is sitting there, the quarterback from Kentucky, who a lot of people thought would be gone by now. But he's
not
right
number
now
one
the top of the
necessarily, but
board.
somewhere.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. But in terms of the Big Ten, as ESPN has it right now, the best available is Joey Porter Jr., the cornerback out of Penn State, who was projected to be a first-round pick, and now is still sitting there as we get into day two.
Somebody's going to get a steal because he is a fantastic cornerback, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said, and like, I mean, honestly, I had heard of Devin Witherspoon, but I'd always heard more pub coming from Joey Porter Jr. and so I'm kind of surprised that he did not get taken. I really am. It's a conundrum. It's a grab your chin and go,
One of those.
Stroke your chin if you've got a half-grown beard like such as I. You pet it like it's a dog and wonder what in the world is going on like that or with that. So I don't know.
Besides that, ESPN has the 8th best available as we get into round 2, day 2. Keanu Benton, the defensive tackle out of Wisconsin. They have the 11th best available being the center Joe Tipman from Wisconsin. They have the 14th best available being tight end Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Jaden Reed, the receiver from Michigan State at 18. John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota at number 19. And that rounds out the top 20 that ESPN has for Big Ten players best available as we get into round 2. And somebody I'll throw in, since, again, I have the Michigan State interest, that may not be a second rounder. We'll see how everything shakes out, but pay attention to Bryce Behringer and where the boot with goggles, the punter lands, because I love that. Because he was tremendous, and he's been impressing people during some of these off-season workouts, the different pro days, combines, whatever. Bryce Behringer is somebody to pay attention to as we move forward into day 2 and 3.
So today is what, second and third round, correct? They do second and third, and then 4th through 7th tomorrow, which I can remember they used to do it all on Saturday, Sunday, and it was, like noon to 11:30 at night on Saturday, and it was just wall-to-wall draft. And because that was when the first round you got 15 minutes, the second round you got 10, and then the third round I think you still had 10. It took forever, and I think they've done wise on getting on getting this set up the way they do. But what always, through my years of fantasy football drafting, I know how the draft works. You don't take your punters and kickers until later in the draft. So the one time that I remember a punter going in the first round was my Chicago Bears taking Todd Sauerbrunn from West Virginia back in the day.
What year would that have been?
Maybe late 90s, I think.
Okay.
Maybe. And
interesting.
That's the only time I have ever seen, and people were losing their minds. Why would you waste a first round pick? And then he punted in games, and they were like, oh, that's why you spent the first round pick on him, because he had a leg that absolutely, and they must do something with the water in Morgantown, because Pat McAfee came from West Virginia as well. And so he was also the first punter I ever saw that, how back in the day they used to have the flowing sleeves that didn't have the elastic cuff. He would tighten it up, so it was against it. He didn't have the loose sleeve. He had it tightened up to where he was showing off the guns and everything. I'm like, this guy's BA right here, buddy.
Some swagger out of a putter.
He had a leg that would just, I mean, I think his first like 3 or 4 games, he averaged over 50 yards a punt. And like and the thing is the return, you know, a lot of times they say if you outkick coverage, you can have great average, but the return, the net is a lot small. His net was minute because he would get air under it as well as length. And so the Bears were able to cover the punt and keep the returns down, but they were getting 50 yards a punt. But he ended up going to, I think, Carolina after that, and then Denver. But yeah, so Todd Sauerbrunn, the only first-round punter I've ever seen drafted.
Hey, real quick, before we end up taking our final quarter break and getting into the fourth quarter, we do have some news outside of the NFL draft we can get into for the Big Ten. Big Ten basketball on the men's side, the conference opponents have been released, and we could go through and see what we think here. Let's start. We'll go alphabetical order. How's this?
Okay.
We'll start Illinois. And excuse me. I'll just name the one place because the 2 plays, obviously, that means they're playing each of those teams home and away. And that's the majority of the teams in the conference.
I think they play what? 8 teams, both places?
I believe 7.
7. Okay.
7.
Okay.
Yeah. Right? Or 6.
Well, they have 10 home, 10 away. I know that.
7. It's 7.
Okay. So there are 3 teams they'll play only at home and 3 teams they only play it
correct
on the road.
Yep.
And they're obviously not the same because, you know.
Correct.
And you can't play yourself.
So by math.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with Illinois. At home, the one place, they're going to take on Indiana, Minnesota, Nebraska. Their one plays on the road, Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin. Any thoughts? Move on to Indiana.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know what? My biggest question about Illinois is just what are they gonna? You know, I mean, are they gonna fix the? And by the way, I just looked. It was a 2nd round pick, not a 1st round pick for the Bears. And you know what the kicker is? And I know I'm completely getting off topic. He was a pick by the Bears, and the only pictures they have is when he was with the Patriots.
You say the kicker with that or the punter with that?
The punter. Well, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. The kicker for this punter is they only have pictures of him punting for the Patriots on the little clip, or you know, the overview or whatever. I'm like, he was a Bears pick for crying out loud. At least put him in his uniform.
Write a sternly
worded letter.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for Illinois is, are they going to figure it out for themselves? I don't care about who their opponents are if they can't figure it out, you know? And I want to say that they added another wing from Oregon here just recently too. And I'm like, didn't you learn from last year on what was going on with, I mean, yeah, you had a great athletic team, but you couldn't gel. Get somebody that's going to help gel. And maybe this guy will, I don't know, but Illinois' biggest concern is within, not who they're playing yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. But the solutions I have for you, or the answers I have in hand now, are schedule related. So I agree. I get that. Indiana, their one plays at home. They'll have Iowa, Michigan State, and Northwestern come to Assembly Hall. They will go to Illinois, Michigan, and Rutgers. For Iowa, their home one plays Nebraska, Ohio State, Rutgers. Their one plays on the road will be Indiana, Michigan State, and Northwestern. Getting IU and MSU in there for Iowa is tough for your one
road,
plays.
at least. Yeah. And you've got to travel there. And you know what? We still don't know what's going on because the transfer portal is still open. But IU's going to struggle if they don't add some people because they're losing a ton. So, and that's not me talking as a Purdue fan necessarily. That's me being realistic on what they're losing compared to what they've got coming back in.
Yep.
You know, they've got a lot to replace, and if they don't do it right, they're going to have another down year for IU, which Yay, as a Purdue fan. But you know what I'm saying? It's just, they're kind of along the way of Illinois they've got to figure out what's going on within them before they have to worry about who they're playing, and
Yeah. Well, and the Hoosiers did get a little bit of good news in getting
Yes.
Xavier Johnson to come back for that medical redshirt.
year. Yeah.
So Johnson being back is a big boost, but you're right. I mean, with Trace Jackson Davis being gone, Jalen Hood-Schifino being gone, like there's some gaps to fill.
That's a major part of your offense and a good portion of your defense leaving and not coming back next year that you've got to replace. And that's a big question mark that IU's going to have going in or going forward.
For Maryland, their one plays at home will be Michigan, Nebraska, and Purdue. Their one plays on the road will be Minnesota, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. For Michigan, their one plays, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin at home. Their road one plays will be Maryland, Northwestern, and Penn State. For Michigan State, their one plays, and Michigan State and Purdue, we could take a couple minutes taking a look at. Well, not just because
I know this one play here. That's why I'm laughing.
Well, not just because we have fan interest, but I truly believe as we sit April 28th, like these are the top two contenders for the Big Ten.
Correct. Yes.
For next year.
And I don't know that anybody would have a big argument.
Right.
I mean, Maryland, we've talked about it. Maryland might be the closest. Maryland and Ohio State may be the two closest. But even if you add certain people that we've talked about to either one of those rosters, we still think Purdue and Michigan State are number 1 and number 2.
Agreed. Even if in this hypothetical world, Maryland's able to land Hunter Dickinson away from Kansas,
Dalton.
Kentucky, like if they're able to do it, I still like Michigan State and
Correct.
Purdue's rosters more. But for Michigan State, their one plays at home, Iowa, Ohio State, and Rutgers. The one plays on the road, and what cued the Sam's chuckle, Indiana, Nebraska, and Purdue.
Yet again, you got to go to Mackey.
Being the one plays on the road is brutal. But yeah, going to Mackey Arena, which is just considered the abyss, like it's just a black hole. That's tough.
And if they have a blackout game, it's even darker.
But it is tough. I don't think Michigan State has won there since 2015.
It's been
I believe it's been about 8 years. So we'll see. Maybe Michigan State can snap that streak this year, but that is a tough.
I can tell you it will be the game of the week if things hold serve the way we think it's gonna, with those two being the top 2 teams.
Game of the week for Big Ten perspective, it'd be game of the year. Like
I'm talking nationally, like
I would
game
agree.
Of the week.
Agreed. Yeah, but I was gonna say, like from Big Ten perspective, like. I mean, as you sit on April 28th, and this is really a stupid thought exercise to do, but you could say that's for the Big Ten championship as of now on April 28th.
Well, we don't have when it is. It could be like
Yeah.
the second game of the conference. I mean, honestly, it won't be, but because I think the Big Ten's probably smarter than that. But I mean, you just don't know where it's scheduled at. You know who the opponents are, you just don't know when.
Again, a stupid thought exercise to do. But if we want to do one, 7 months before we get into 8 months before we get into,
I guarantee you it's not going to be a Tuesday night, though.
I bet you're right. Minnesota, their one plays at home, Maryland, Rutgers, Wisconsin. Their one plays on the road, Illinois, Michigan, Purdue. That's rough.
Yes,
Nebraska, their one plays at home, Michigan State, Penn State, Purdue. On the road will be Illinois, Iowa, and Maryland. For Northwestern, their home one plays will be Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State. Their road one plays, Indiana, Rutgers, Wisconsin. That's pretty difficult as well. Ohio State, one plays at home, Illinois, Maryland, and Purdue. One plays on the road will be Iowa, Michigan State, and Northwestern.
That's not an easy road one plays either for them.
We got 4 left. Penn State, home one plays, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin. Road one plays, Nebraska, Purdue, and Rutgers. Now Purdue. This is one of the other teams that, I mean, obviously you're looking at between Michigan State and Purdue as of now being a title contender or title favorite. Home one plays for the Boilermakers, Michigan State, Minnesota, Penn State. Road one plays, Maryland, Nebraska, Ohio State. I think that's a pretty good breakdown for the Boilers.
The only one that, it all depends on how Ohio State could be it could be that dark horse that jumps out, but going to Maryland always is tough. And with the way that, that's going to be the absolute hardest one of the three that they play on the road, one play wise.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I do think overall, like, no matter what, you're going to have some degree of difficulty.
Correct.
It's a Big Ten.
Yes, right.
But, like, overall,
they don't
not
have
a bad breakdown.
Piscataway.
Yeah. Well, they do.
They do. That's right. They play the two plays.
They don't have to go to East Lansing.
That's what I meant. Gosh, I love Piscataway. I knew
they don't have to go to Penn State, and they don't have to go to Minnesota.
But they don't have to go to East Lansing.
That's right.
And the barn always is tough, even when last year wasn't, but
if you go to East Lansing, what we've learned is we don't exactly know who's going to win, but it's going to be a one possession game at the end. Whether it's
going to be a one possession game that the winning shot gets hit within 10 seconds of the end of the game. That's just the way it works.
Whether it's 2018 Bridges hitting the 3 against Purdue, whether it's 2020 Travion Williams, or was it 21?
I believe it was 21.
It was 21. Williams had the layup in the final second. 22, Walker hit the 3 to beat him. And then last year, Edey had the layup. Mm-hmm. So you don't really know who wins, but you're in for a good one anytime it goes to East Lansing. Let's move to Rutgers. Their one plays at home, Indiana, Northwestern, Penn State. One plays on the road, Iowa, Michigan State, and Minnesota. And to wrap this up, home one plays for Wisconsin, Illinois, Maryland, Northwestern. On the road, Michigan, Minnesota, and Penn State. So that's how the breakdown goes for the Big Ten.
Wisconsin doesn't have a terrible road one play schedule. Michigan's the toughest one, and we don't know what they're going to be going into next year. I mean, they got a little bit nicer of a road schedule for the one place.
And with Wall coming back to Madison, you get some of those younger players developing, like a Siegen. It's going to be interesting to see how the Badgers fare. But let's go ahead and move now to the fourth quarter.
I spelled that wrong. I sent you a private chat.
Let's hit the whistle. Now
for
me in the middle
headlines. Of a message, mister.
Yeah, Stan we were trying to behind the scenes discuss about the headlines and what was coming up here, and Sam was trying to tell me to go first right when I asked him to hit the whistle, and it came out.
I was in the middle of first. I was in the middle of typing the word first, and you said let's hit the whistle, so I had to hit send just so you got at least the message, and yeah, it came out first.
So I got to be honest, and we are coming up against it, but I'm a little worried we might share the same headline. That's not one of the things we've talked about yet. Yeah. Because mine is a Purdue-based headline. Okay. Is yours?
Well, you go ahead, because yes, it is. So you go ahead, and we'll talk about it if it is.
I'm guessing we're the same, because I've been talking about this throughout the week on other platforms and whatnot, but I think it's such a neat thing that's taking place in West Lafayette. Renovations happening to Ross-Ade Stadium, and one of the big things that's happening there at Ross-Ade is he's shaking his head. So I'll tell you what, it's Dalton Daly, it's Sam Sentinel.
Sam Sentinel.
We can combine it together. But just to give everybody the story, if you're not aware yet, Ross-Ade Stadium undergoing some renovations. They got a great donation coming in from the Breeze family. And part of what the renovations and new look to Ross-Ade will be is, nice down below. The tunnel will be named in honor of Joe Tiller. It'll for now be the Tiller Tunnel that Purdue will run out of for their games there at Ross-Ade Stadium. And I thought, especially as we're in the middle of celebrating Gene Cady going into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, a Purdue icon that was so deserving, and it's been time to do something. Joe Tiller, much the same way, took Purdue to a Big Ten championship in football. Do you know how hard that is?
They've been to 2 Rose Bowls in the history of the school, and one of them was with Joe Tiller, or Joe Tiller took him to it, and so yeah, that's a big thing.
He was
Purdue doesn't win football championships.
He was innovative. He was ahead at the time when it comes to offense and philosophy.
Basketball on grass.
Yeah, and so The point being, like, despite the or not despite, but besides the accolades, it's just a really neat way to remember Joe Tiller and what he did for that Purdue program for the rest of time. I thought it was such a great way to honor the memory of Joe Tiller and everything he did. And now that I've kind of shared what the story is from the Purdue fan base, what's the feelings for you? What is the effect for you?
Well, the one thing that I that made me want to cover this as my headline was, let's think about, you even mentioned it came from the Brees Foundation. Drew Brees is an all-time great NFL quarterback who went to Purdue and going into college only had like 2 major offers.
And part of the context is Brees was hurt towards the end of his high school career. Correct. And a lot of people said, we're out. And Joe Tiller and Purdue said, no, we're in. And
honestly, shame on the Chargers for not seeing that when he got hurt at the end of his rookie contract and they decided not to re-sign him, because that should show that, I mean, granted, don't get me wrong, they probably thought, well, this is a different injury, but he has the work ethic and the wherewithal to do it. But anyways, my point being is that meant something to Drew Brees, and Purdue is his alma mater. He loves West Lafayette. He loves, he's a very philanthropic person, and to honor somebody that didn't give up on him is what really rang true to me. Granted that, this could have been done at any point, but Drew Brees finally decided, you know what, we're going to donate some money. We're going to make this happen. That tells you what kind of man Joe Tiller was to the people that he brought into his team, and to honor him for the rest of Ross-Ade Stadium's history with Tiller Tunnel is just an amazing show of respect and love for a person that didn't give up on him. So Joe Tiller was fabulous. And he reminded me of my grandfather because he just had that look, but he knew what he was doing. The basketball on grass, the whole, we're going to run the ball by throwing. I know that sounds really odd, but they'd literally throw a bubble screen and put the ball in their fastest receiver's hands, and they would get 15 yards. And Joe Tiller was the first coach that I saw that beat Notre Dame. And that was a big thing in my life, because I told you why I have a disdain for Notre Dame is because the only time I ever got to watch them, because I didn't have cable and college football every game wasn't broadcast. The only time I ever got to watch them was when they got their butts handed to them in South Bend. So it was a big thing to be able to watch them beat them. And it was darn near tier worthy to beat Notre Dame. And Joe Tiller was the coach. And he brought that, we're not going to be scared of any team. His first year there with Drew Brees there, they went to the Alamo Bowl and beat the number 4 team in the country in K-State. He brought a different, now don't get me wrong, they've been a dumpster fire in between in there with some teams, but he brought a new breath of what Purdue football should be doing. And so this is just a huge thing. Yeah.
No, this is absolutely tremendous. So the Joe Tiller Tunnel at Ross-Ade Stadium, that's our headline for the Dalton Daily.
And I kind of hijacked this Dalton Daily and Sam Sentinel there.
No, that's totally fine. I tell you what, though, we're up against it. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find us on the way out?
Yes, sir. So Instagram and Twitter, it's at B1G_talk. So big talk. You have to put the underscore in there or you're going to get, something completely different. That's not us. Then you go to Facebook, B1G Talk. So big talk, just type it in. Think about it even. They might even pull it up there. If you just say it out loud, eventually something will come up for us because that's the way Facebook works. But we're on oddpodsmedia.com. We are the only sports show in the network, so that fits well. And I still haven't changed the graphic, Dalton. It says twice a week on ASAP, but right now during the off season, the down season until the end of July, we're going once a week on Fridays But you can catch us on ASAP Network. Get the app if you so choose. If not, you can find us on Spotify, a video, or anywhere you want to listen to us, anywhere that gives podcasts. So that's us.
Perfect. Well, once again, we want to thank all of you for tuning in and joining us for another episode of Big Talk. That's Sam Sprunger. I'm Dalton Shetler. Until next week, and until we know a little bit more about where Big Ten alums are going to find and call their homes. So long. We'll talk to you then.
See ya.